Good morning and welcome to episode 6 of the Palace of Prospect Introduction Series, or the Introduction to Palace of Prospect series dev blog here on YouTube. Thank you for chiming in, and today I'm gonna talk about the Shadow Affinity. It is the last of the 4 action decks that we have to that I have to tell you about before I can dive into other stuff like changes that happened because of past playtests or the way in which mechanics developed through the history, or items, or the character cards. So I'll do a quick run back again. There are 4 main affinities. You have the Dawn Affinity, which makes other people draw cards, so that the combo in which people play can extend. If this sounds like gibberish to you, please watch like episode 1 or episode 2 from this series, because it will explain everything barely, and otherwise just watch everything and everything will be everything will just fall into place eventually if you try hard enough, because my my explanation skills aren't solid. They are not, but I mean, you must be smart, so you can figure it out. Second one is the Dusk deck. And the Dusk deck makes the player themselves, the player who plays the card, draw cards and deal damage that way. Then you have the Light action deck, or the Light Affinity, and the Light Affinity deals a lot of situational damage. And the last one is the Shadow Affinity, and the Shadow Affinity makes you discard a lot of cards and deal damage that way. So it's sort of a I think it's called like Blood Hunter in D&D. It's something that deals damage by taking damage themselves, or at least reducing the amount of cards in their hand and dealing damage that way. So at the very start of the ideation of the Shadow Affinity, the discarding process was harsh, because like almost every card made you discard cards unconditionally, and you would just run out of any cards in your hand by the time you played 2 action cards, and it would suck. You could not have a full Shadow deck without running into that problem. So we made a lot of changes, and I will show you the very first iteration, which was problems. So you have Shadow Punch. Let's just dive in with the very first ones. So Shadow Punch and Sneak are the action cards that would be the deal a certain amount of damage, period, and the draw one, another one draws one, etc. And this is kind of what I mean with that the Light and Shadow Affinity sort of diverge from that path. So in order to keep their real own identity, and for sure with the Shadow deck, because you can't just state discard 1 action card on a action card. Like, why would you ever play that? You just have to get rid of that card. So there was this Shadow Punch that deals a lot more damage than most other 1 value action cards, but it makes you discard 1 action card from your hand. And now this deals a lot of damage, but it also makes you discard a lot of cards very early in the game. And there are characters that only have 4 action cards in their hand at the start of a turn. If you play one, discard one, that's 2. If the other action card in your hand that you still have there is also a Shadow Punch, you have a maximum of 2 action cards you can play. And that's bad. So it is now a deal 2 damage and discard 1 action card to double this damage. That is one of the ways in which the Shadow deck got improved over time, and it is a very it is a way that sort of signifies the way in which the rest of the deck has also changed. So if we look at the rest, yeah, a lot of action cards had their value swapped around, and there are a few adjustments made at the higher values, because 50 damage. What the actual why? I don't know why I ever wrote deal 50 damage. Also, if a player couldn't discard the amount of action cards they needed to, they would instantly die with a finisher move. That's not there anymore. I mean, it's very high risk, high reward, but it can half health a boss. So, nah. It's a way more synergistic action card as it stands now. So, with that said, oh shit. Here, if anyone wants to look at Midnight Snack, or what Midnight Snack was, not that it changed that much, but there you go. Then let's go into the first one value, and that is Shadow Punch. Shadow Punch is now, as I said, a deal 2 damage. You may discard 1 action card to deal 4 damage instead. So it is that's what it does. It is not really interesting past beyond that, and that's what it has in common with most of the other 1 value action cards. So it's just a deal 2 damage or discard 1 to deal 4 damage instead. Then let's go over to the second one. Oh, and by the way, these not all of the shadow action cards have a what was it called? Like a thematic, really like pushed into the action on the card, into the effects. So, I mean, you could see this as what something a Shadow Punch would be, but it's mostly just flavor in the case of the Shadow deck. Like the action cards don't necessarily reflect their names that well in this deck. So that might be something I can work on whilst continuing development, but yeah, so that might be something worth looking into. Yeah, I'm big again. Nice. So let's go over the second one value, and that is Sneak. So Sneak is a much more interesting action card than Shadow Punch, and that being said, it's one of the only real interesting one value cards, because this thing can actually do some good work in late game fights. It's you can just get one values out of your hand, and if you know you have some high value still in your deck, there's a big chance you can deal some good damage with this, because it states discard one action card, draw one action card, deal damage equal to the difference in their value. So you discard one. You discard one value. You draw one 4 value. That's 3 damage. You discard one value and you draw one value. That's 0 damage. So this almost inches towards the a light affinity action card, but it's not really, because it does use it does use discarding action cards as a decider for how much damage is going to be dealt. That is mostly what it does. So it is a way to get rid of some 1 values from your hand, but it is also a way to set up for the Shadow 10 value. May you be lucky enough to get it into your hand. So now we will go on to the 2 value, which is Lunar Expansion. And Lunar Expansion is a deal 2 damage, play any other Shadow action card within velocity, and the turn continues from there. What this means is you deal 2 damage, and the character you play as has stats on their card, and those stats can be influenced by items and monsters. So monsters can attack those stats to lower them, and items can up those stats, and some monsters give you more of those stats if you beat them. But one of those stats is velocity, and it signifies how much value you can play above the value of the card before, or beyond the previous card's value. So let's say this is a 2. I play this Lunar Expansion, and I have 3 velocity. That means I can play a 3, a 4, or a 5 after this 2, because I can play in a range of 3 above the 2. So it's 3, 4, or 5. This is a way in which you can very quickly set up for some higher value action cards to be played in a turn, or in a round. I mean, it really is an action card that is still good in the late game, because you just speed up the round. You speed up the combo a lot, and you can do a lot of damage while doing so. Yeah, that's most of it. So then I would like to go on to the 3 value, which is Deterred Light. And Deterred Light is an action card that also came by in either the very first episode or the second episode, because it is a very good example of what an action card in Palace of Prospect does. Like, it deals 6 damage, it deals damage, and it has another effect that isn't really hard to understand in many of the cases. So some effects are quite hard, I'll give you that. But for example, this is, if possible, discard at least 1 non-shadow action card and deal its value as bonus damage. So as you are the player with the Shadow action deck, or the Shadow Affinity, that does not mean you will only have Shadow action cards in your deck necessarily. Because during the game, you can choose from a shared pool of action cards, a pool shared among all the other players. So action cards from all the other affinities will be in this pool of cards. This means that if you have a 7 value light action card in your hand, you can discard that 7 value light action card with Deterred Light and deal 6 plus 7 damage. That's pretty nice. So that's most of what it does. So this action card, really urges the player to diversify its deck, and that is something that I also want in the game as a mechanic, because like it just makes your life a lot easier as soon as you kind of understand the mechanics of the game. It makes it a lot easier to continue combos when you can combo on all players on the field instead of just the player left to you or just the player right of you. So let's say the player to your left is the Dawn player and the player to your right is the Light player. As the Shadow player, you can almost always play if the Light Affinity player plays toward you, because you can also play below their action cards with complementation. But you can't do this with the Dawn player, because Shadow action cards are not complementary to the Dawn action deck or the Dawn Affinity. So in this situation, the Shadow player could add Dusk action cards in their deck if they get the chance, to give them more opportunities to react on action cards coming in from the left. And this action card makes sort of gives you a hint that that is a good way to build your deck. That's mostly what it does. So then I want to go on to the very last action card that will also be in your starter deck. So that will be the Shadow Punches, 3 of them, the Sneaks, 3 of them, the Lunar Expansion, 2 of them, Deterred Light, 1 of them, and Dark Flames. And Dark Flames says deal 6 damage, same as the 3 value, but it gives you a buff during this round of combat. Every time during this round of combat, if you discard an action card or you discard action cards, you also draw one action card. This means that, let's say you discard 3 action cards at once because of another action card, you draw one. But if you discard 1, you also draw 1. So it doesn't stack, but it's still a nice way to have more action cards in your hand during a round. It doesn't do much more than that, but you could combo it with the Dusk action card, for example, that makes you deal more damage equal to the amount of action cards you've drawn in a round. You can kind of stack that action card with Dark Flames if you want. So those were all the action cards in the starting deck. And then we go on to the action cards that are not in the starting deck, and those are also the first action cards, or the action cards that can be upgraded during the game. So first will be the 5 value, Nightmare. And Nightmare is a deal 4 damage, and deal 3 becomes 5 damage for every action card you've discarded this round. And this can stack up quite quickly, and you won't be punished as much for discarding a lot of action cards if you have the Dark Flames buff on you. If you have the Dark Flames buff working, it is very easy to do a lot of damage with Nightmare if you have it in your hand. So yeah, if you can get this card, and you can get it when you have played the Dark Flames, you're quite scary to the monsters. You can really do a lot of work. And onto the 6th value, Dreamcatcher. This is the one that actually does quite nicely live up to its name, I think, because it's sort of really it really just catches dreams. You could call it Dream Eater too, but that's really Pokemon-y, so I rather wouldn't. But it is a deal 8, becomes 10 damage, and collect up to 4 or 5 of your own played action cards that will become collect up to 3, 4 of your own played action cards. No, it will become collect up to 2, becomes 3. I haven't looked at that yet, and I will change it. Discard 1 action card per collected action card and deal damage equal to their combined discarded value. So it really is, you catch the dreams, you just put the shadow action cards, most likely, or the other action cards that you played, back into your hand and deal its value as bonus damage. So you sort of caught the value of the dreams, and you can unleash that. That's sort of the idea behind the effects on this card, and I hope that plays out in. I hope it can be interpreted in that way without thinking too much about it. Then going on to the 7th value, which is Lucky 7, and this is a really great card. It is a fan favorite under most of the or with most of the playtesters. There's a lot of people that are really happy when they have Lucky 7 in their hand, just because it can deal so much damage, and it is fun to just play Lucky 7, turn around your deck, turn around your hand, shuffle it, and throw the top card on top of the Lucky 7 and hope that it is a high value card. Yeah, it is. It can get quite ridiculous, the amount of damage you can deal with this card, but it is so hard to get your hand into a good state in which Lucky 7 will do guaranteed good damage. But you can do this by discarding a lot of action cards, which is the synergy that this card has with the rest of the Shadow Affinity. So just get your hand in a state in which Lucky 7 is one of 2 cards in your hand, play Lucky 7, and if you manipulated your hand in a good way, the other action card will be like a 5 value or a 6 value, or if you're lucky, a 10 value that will deal 70 damage. But you'll have to get your hand in a nice, in a good place to do that. So this is one of the action cards that really reward getting your hand in a favorable spot, or in getting a favorable hand and manipulating your hand in that way. It will reward you so much for doing that. And then we go on to 8, Hellish Rebuke. And it states every player may discard action cards with at least 4 becomes 2 value as they please. Deal damage equal to the combined value of the discarded action cards. So this action card just deals a lot of damage if not everyone has yet wasted their high value action cards yet, and if they are willing to waste them on Hellish Rebuke. So this is a great way to end combat if you can, but it really it needs all players to come together and make a decision on whether or not they want to make a really big Hellish Rebuke, or they don't have enough action cards to do so, and they will take big damage if they throw away the wrong cards. So this is a card which you have to really think about what is smart. So is it smart to throw away all my high value cards and deal as much damage as possible? Or do I just throw away one, chip away at the monster, and then at a later time? So that's the train of thought that you should have if you play Hellish Rebuke. There's not much more beyond that, I think. So then we'll go to After 8, which is the 9 value action card. And I changed this action card like 2 hours ago, actually, because the effect was every ninth action card played this combat becomes 25 bonus damage. And now it is, if there are at least 8 action cards played before this card this round, deal 20 to 25, 20 becomes 25 damage. Otherwise, the 9th action card this combat deals that damage as bonus damage. So let's say you can count the amount of action cards played, because everyone has this grid in which their action cards are displayed. So you can just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's say everyone in total played 8 action cards at least, and this is, let's say, action card number 9 or action card number 10. It will deal 20 becomes 25 damage. So becomes the damage it will deal as it is if it is upgraded, by the way. So it will do a lot of damage. But in case this is like the 7th or the 8th action card played this round, it will just wait until the 9th action card comes around, and then boom, it will deal this damage still. But you'll have to make sure you reach the 9th action card in order to deal this damage. And yeah, I thought it was sort of a high risk, high reward, just like the rest of the Shadow Action deck is, because of their discard mechanic. And this action card sort of does the same, but without discarding, so I thought it would still fit the deck, even though it doesn't really look like it when you first look at it. Because my time with this iteration of the card has been so short, I do not necessarily know of any hidden synergies that this card has, but there could be many. Then this is the next action card, the 10th value, is really the one that you work towards if you are the Shadow Affinity player, because it synergizes so much with everything you've done before this in your round. It much more than much more than this iteration, in which it deals 50 damage, which is way too much. It deals 20 flat damage now. And all players discard 2 action cards and 1 item card. That's just weird. That, like, then why did you discard action cards over here? If not for the effect that you will see right now. Finisher move. Deal 20 damage. Deal additional damage equal to the total amount of value in your discard pile. 20 damage. Let's say you also played Hellish Rebuke and got rid of all your other high value action cards, and you also had Dark Flames, the Dark Flames buff, so you could discard so many action cards, and you have a 4, a 5, a 5, that's already 14 damage, and a 6, that's 20 extra damage, and a 7, because Lucky 7 discards itself. It's like 47 damage. If those are the only ones that you discarded, you most likely discarded a lot of 1s and 2s too. So I imagine you could do a lot of damage with this. Also, it ends the turn if it is not upgraded. I forgot to put that in because this is also one of the cards that I just finished writing and changing into what it is now. And I really like this one a lot more than the other one. The other card. This one really feels like something that you work towards, and it really should be satisfying to do a lot of damage with this. Way more satisfying than discarding your item. Like that shouldn't even be a mechanic. So it isn't anymore. Yeah, that's what this does, and it ends the turn if it is not upgraded. Then, over to the very last action card in the Shadow Affinity, the Shadow deck, which is the X value Midnight Snack. And Midnight Snack is discard up to X action cards to deal their combined damage. In an X value action card, the X is the value of the action card played before it. So let's say this is the very first action card played in a round. It's a 0. But let's say there's a 7 played before it. This thing will let you discard up to 7 action cards to deal their combined damage. And that's a great way to set up for a finisher move, for example. And it's also a great way to set up for for Nightmare, because you'll have a lot of discarded action cards and your Nightmare will deal more damage. Those are the main things that really synergize with Midnight Snack. It's not really much more than that. And on that note, I would like to stop talking about the Shadow Action deck because, well, finish talking about all the cards. Again, if you have any question about the action cards, please let me know. I don't know what my next video will be about, but you'll see that when it comes out. And let me see. Yeah. If you like the video, please let me know. If you dislike, please let me know, and let me know what I can do better. If you have any feedback at all, same thing. And I would like to see you all in the next episode. Bye.